Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laser Focus. This is the deep dive pop culture podcast from Nerdist. My name is Kyle Anderson. Thank you for listening. This week, we are going to talk about just hot on the heels of May the 4th be with you, a fake holiday that people have come up with, and then Revenge of the 5th. Obviously, we are behind the times on this, but we're going to talk about Tales of the Empire, the new animated shorts season, which is a follow-up of Tales of the Jedi, which came out, I think, a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, something like that. Maybe longer ago. I actually have no idea. But in order to talk about that, I'm joined once again by Nerdist's Star Wars field reporter. That's not true. Editor-in-chief, Amy Ratcliffe. Hello, Amy.
Hi. I'm sorry. I need to look up Tales of the Jedi now because
When it came out.
I feel like 2022 is correct because 2022, October 2022.
Okay. So yeah, a little over a year ago.
Yeah. Anyway, I like the title Star Wars Field Reporter. That just sounds like I'm like going out on the streets in Coruscant.
Yeah.
Um,
The beat.
Get the beat, getting the news.
Yeah.
Which I probably would not survive a night on the streets of Coruscant. So
No, it seems bad, right?
most of it, right? I know there's like nicer levels, but I feel like I wouldn't be able to afford that. I'd live on some like seedy underworld
No.
level, and I'm
You'd
not
be
built
surrounded
for
by
that.
death stick dealers.
Yeah, I'm not built for it.
No. So it's an interesting, because both Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire are about, I guess, total like 80 minutes, 6 episodes, 15-ish minutes apiece. And they both effectively have 2-3 episode arcs. Tales of the
Tales
Empire
of
is,
the Jedi was only 6 episodes? It
yeah.
was. I really thought it was more. Shit. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I was just like, thought, well, that plays into anyway. We'll talk
Yeah.
about that.
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's absolutely like, so so when we were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about, Amy suggested Tales of the Empire, which neither of us had watched at that point because it was brand new. And I had not watched Tales of the Jedi. I just never got around to it. And so I watched that, and then we were both I don't want to give the game away too much, but we were both sort of lukewarm at best on Tales of the Empire. And then you said that Tales of the Jedi was better. And so then I watched that and was like, well, we have to incorporate that into our discussion because it's not just better, it's like it's a million times better. Like it's I'm having not a hard time figuring out why, because I actually think it's a pretty easy reason why, which is that the characters that Tales of the Jedi focuses on are interesting. The characters that Tales of the Empire focuses on are not interesting.
I think they're more interesting.
Yeah.
I was really excited, for example, about Barriss. Like, that's kind of when I saw the trailer and we
Right.
saw that Barriss was in it. That's what got me excited enough to be like, okay, Kyle, let's do a laser focus on this because I'm excited
Right.
to like finally get the continuation of her journey after 15 years. I don't know, a lot of years. It might be like 15 years.
So catch people up, because it has been a long time for me too, but like what happened? I know Barriss like defected essentially, but what exactly happened in the Clone Wars with her?
Yeah, so towards the end of season 5 of the Clone Wars, she basically became which fair, became very disillusioned with the Jedi and the fact that Jedi were peacekeepers fighting a war and not really contributing to the overall peace of the galaxy as they should. But she demonstrated that and expressed those feelings in a violent way, which is not the answer. And she coordinated with people who had a similar sentiment and bombed the Jedi Temple. And then that's what got framed Ahsoka for it. Ahsoka got thrown into jail, tried, kicked out of the Jedi Order. And I don't remember exactly how they figured out Barriss did it. I know Ahsoka was on the run, and I think she just figured it out maybe with Asajj Ventress. And when they figured that out, Barriss went to jail, and the Jedi Council went back to Ahsoka and was like, "Oh, RB, that was your trial." And she's like, "No." It was so dumb. And
Yeah.
she walked away. So Barriss played a huge part in Ahsoka's journey. That was a real turning point. And I think it's interesting because I think as Ahsoka gets older, one certainly we saw in season 7 of the Clone Wars, the final season, when she met Trace and her sister, whose name I'm spacing on.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
remember either. I'll look it up while you're
but
talking.
but like, there she's encountering everyday people in Coruscant who are like, yeah, the Jedi, like, what have they done for us? And I think the older Ahsoka gets, she kind of continues to see the flaws in the Jedi Order, right? So that maybe she even, I think her and Barriss come to feeling a similar way. Um, that's what I wish we would have got to see in the shorts because, well, one, I want to see Ahsoka and everything. Let's be honest, but I feel
Right.
like those two are due for some kind of confrontation, discussion, like
Y
re-meeting.
yeah, yeah, it's Rafa is Teresa's sister, by the way.
Rafa, yes, thank you.
Um, so yeah, I think one of the interesting things that covers the end of the Clone Wars, but then also, both Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire, less so Tales of the Empire, obviously, because of that first arc, which we'll get to, um, is kind of like how the Jedi think that they are, needed kind of, I guess bipartisan or, apolitical entities of truth and righteousness, but they're actually like a tool. They're a tool of the Senate, which is a big part of season, or I guess Tales of the Jedi. And then just like they're cops essentially, like they're a tool of the government, and them kind of coming to terms with that. And I was actually really impressed that a and this is coming from Dave Filoni, who is like could not be more of a George Lucas stan, um,
Right.
and is following George Lucas's kind of lead in almost everything he does. Uh, and that the Jedi are the kind of the focal point of this entire franchise, which Disney has you know fostered and put forth as like one of the best things ever. Uh, to say that the Jedi are flawed and like the Jedi system is flawed, and I think that is one of the major things that I really liked about all of these is that like yeah, the Jedi Order was like was bad. Like the council
It's
was not not effectual. It was all based on kind of politics, and anybody who had like um a strong stance, eh, or tried to act more righteously were like kind of tamped down, which we saw in Tales of the Jedi with Dooku, which I think we'll go through each of the arcs of both shows, but I love that stuff. Because I do get kind of tired of Jedi because it's so they're just everywhere. And I'm much more interested in that kind of thing. Like Ahsoka on the run, I think is much more interesting to me than her as part of the collective. But yeah,
yeah, I will say I think I have hit my limit on, oh, that Jedi also, I mean, not that I in my head, like there are gonna be a lot of survivors of Order 66,
sure.
but the number of ones that keep coming up and like, "And this story is all about them," I'm like, "Yeah, alright, sure," but all that stuff is very fresh too because I went to see The Phantom Menace in theaters yesterday,
Mm,
which highly recommend, especially if you're in a city. I am not. It is a thing I miss about Los Angeles is having crowds in theaters and having reactions. But I was one of maybe 4 people, which I was just like, oh. And that's not infrequent when I go to that movie theater.
right.
It's a bit of a bummer. But seeing that on the big screen was great. And kind of seeing, even when Qui-Gon tells Padme, once they go back to Naboo after they've been to Coruscant, he's like, I can defend you, like I can be your bodyguard, but I can't intervene otherwise. And it's just like, and of course, when he brings Anakin to the council and they're like,
Hmm.
oh, the Sith couldn't have returned. And like, oh no, they have. We got to figure this out. Also, you can't train this kid. Um, it's yeah, it's just fascinating how the concept of the Jedi, pretty good. But by the time we meet them in the prequel trilogy and we see in the Clone Wars and we see in these shorts, like just too caught up in their own dogma, too caught up in their own hype, and they've lost their way. Which is, even though I'm like, Jedi, I am curious about the Acolyte because it's a
Hmm.
different era, and I'm hoping they'll be better. As
Yeah.
Actual yeah, but we'll see.
I also just finished playing Jedi Survivor, which I know is not a new game, but like I finally got around to finishing it. And I really liked it. I like kind of like Cal is very disillusioned at that point. I don't know if have anybody out there has played the first game or the second game, but Cal Kestis is a really, he starts out as a young kind of scrapper who's hiding his Jedi-ness. And then by the time of Jedi Survivor, he is embracing his power in order to like try to take down the Empire with little like missions and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. Um, he like incorporates a blaster into his fighting style, which is really fun. Like, so he like,
That's cool.
yeah, it's he has like finishing moves on stormtroopers where he'll like, you know, cut their leg and then like they're on the ground, he like shoots them. It's like he goes kind of dark, which I think is rad. Um, uh, but even that, I don't want to spoil too much, but like he's supposed to be like the rare Jedi out here, and then there's like secret Jedi, and it's just like, ugh.
There are so many.
Somebody now, I hope this isn't true, but we'll find out obviously when it comes out. But somebody put forth the theory that Luthen Rael is actually a Jedi in hiding.
Oh, I would be real bummed
I would be
about
so sad, but
that.
he's got the Kyber crystal, like he's got all this stuff, like
Yeah. Look,
you know,
could it make sense? Yes. Would I be the biggest fan of it? No.
no,
I
not at
just
all.
like that he is, like, an angry
Yeah,
man.
I think that is what it ought to be, but yeah. So it does make sense, but I'm really hoping that's not what it is. Luthen Rael, of course, being Stellan Skarsgård's character from Andor. But yeah, so one of the things um you and I have talked about before, I don't know if it's been on mic or not, but like I think the prequels have so much interesting stuff in terms of the world and what would be the characters, and that the Clone Wars really like accentuated and fleshed out. The prequels are just imperfect films, and if George Lucas had a a, a co-writer and maybe even like a director who wasn't him, I think those would have been much better films. Um, but um, the characters themselves are not the problem, and like getting to see like parts of the prequel eras that I hadn't seen before was really cool, and especially that whole y- you know young Dooku and very young Qui-Gon I thought was very cool. So yeah, so let's go through the different. There are effectively 4 arcs across the 2 short series. Um, and I guess let's go chronologically across them. So we'll start with that one that I was mentioning, which is um, Dooku. With it starts with Qui-Gon as his Padawan, and then um, it kind of goes up until right parallel with the end of Phantom Menace, which is cool. Um, but like we start to see that Count Dooku, yes, has a dark side, but also he has like a very strong sense of right and wrong, and he is, it starts with there's been a kidnapping of a senator's son on the planet where the senator comes from. I forget the name of the planet. Um, and they find out quickly, like the son is like, oh my god, my dad's done some very bad stuff. But the dad is so corrupt and like does not care at all for his people, is like willing to kill all these farmers who basically are just like, they want resources for themselves. And so Dooku is very close to just killing that senator, and then only doesn't because Qui-Gon lets the sun go, and the sun goes out and everything like that. But it's like he gets really, really close um, to just taking down that guy. And then uh, I I have always really liked Count Dooku, not least because it's played by Christopher Lee. Actually, as we're talking, I'm wearing a Christopher Lee Dracula t-shirt.
You sure are. Nice. No.
So,
I was just
um,
watching Fellowship last night, and I was like, "Oh, Christopher Lee, you're just great
he's so
at being
good.
terrible,
Yeah.
especially."
I mean, he's great at that stuff, but and Lee does not voice Dooku in the cartoon. That's Corey
Right.
Burton, who is another goat,
So
by the
good.
way. Um, but I just excuse me, I always wanted more from that character in the films. I think he's really interesting in episode 2. I think all the stuff with Camino and Obi-Wan trying to like figure out what's going on with the clones and everything like that is easily the best part of Attack of the Clones in my book.
Yes.
Like I think, I
Yes.
mean,
Not even close.
yeah, all the Anakin Padme stuff sucks
It's
wad. So
it's rough. It's
yeah.
rough. Yeah, and I like Dooku's always really been interesting to me too, because by the time you really get to meet him more in the Clone Wars, he's clearly like an elegant sort of fella. I feel like he's very refined. He
Hmm.
has, and it was hard to reconcile this. He has a title on his home planet that I'm entirely spacing on, but just
Count.
his is it Count? Oh yeah, his name is Count Dooku. Darth, that's not his. Dooku is not his Sith name.
No.
I'm fine. Sereno, that's his home. Jeez. Anyway, like, it was hard to reconcile him with, like, someone who ever led, like, the austere brown robe Jedi life. So, I really liked, once we learned that those shorts would go back, would look at Qui-Gon, and also coming on the before, I guess, Ahsoka, like, it was kind of nice to have that reminder of the lineage, right? That
Hmm.
Yoda trained Dooku, who trained Qui-Gon, who trained Obi-Wan, Anakin, so,
Yeah.
and they, have all been, to some degree,
Yeah.
unconventional Jedi slash turned into Sith or something. And seeing Qui-Gon's relationship with him, because in the book, I don't remember anything today. It's great. There is a book about Baby Qui-Gon and Dooku. I feel like it might be called Master and Apprentice. It's by Claudia Gray. So, and that was like a wonderful read, one, because Claudia Gray, but also it's just a really interesting relationship to explore because we know where Dooku ended up and we saw what we saw of Qui-Gon, and you're like, that couldn't have come from like Mace Windu could have never taught Qui-Gon.
Right.
Um, so it was really cool to see those explored and to watch Qui-Gon as his kind of the little angel voice on his shoulder, the little light side voice as opposed to the dark side one.
Yeah. And in the second episode, we see that, because at that point, Qui-Gon is either not his Padawan anymore or is just not on this mission. But Dooku is with Mace Windu, and they go to a planet where a Jedi has been murdered, and they're trying to figure out what happened. And they quickly figure out that, like, it was essentially a petty squabble between, like, this senator and uh, his, like, guards. Again, a senator who's corrupt and doing bad stuff, but this time they killed the Jedi, the guards, the soldiers did, and then they left the senator alive to try to, like, no, you need to go to the Senate and actually, like, make changes that are positive and all this, so many people die because of this. And um Dooku thinks this is all terrible, and like um but Mace Windu is a by the book kind of person. It's a very good cop, bad cop kind of thing. And at the end of the episode, Dooku learns that he has been passed over for a seat on the council in favor of Mace Windu almost entirely just because of that outing where Windu 100% sells him out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What? Yes.
Which does not put Mace Windu in a very good light, I have to say.
No, I think he's a narc.
Yeah, he's a narc. This is the problem with these, because it's like, is Mace Windu supposed to be a good guy or not? Like, it's very tough.
Yeah,
But he's a narc. But
he's a narc. I was gonna say the coolest I've seen Mace Windu, and I may not stand by this once my memory, but is in Gendy's Clone
100%.
Wars.
That two-parter, I think it's a two-part episode with Mace Windu where he single-handedly takes on like an entire droid army. It's
Yes,
so cool.
it's so much fun.
Yeah. Um but I thought that episode was like really excellent. And then the third episode um is takes place just before and just after um Qui-Gon uh dies at the hands of Darth Maul, where they actually have a last kind of meeting because Qui-Gon has found Anakin on Tatooine and all this stuff and gone to the council, and we're seeing Dooku and Yaddle, interestingly enough, talk about stuff. And then after Qui-Gon dies, we learn that Dooku is been in cahoots with Darth Sidious as a sort of like, I think the Jedi is corrupt. I think the Senate's corrupt. Like all the stuff that we've been seeing
We're
is
like,
actually true.
true. Yes, accurate.
And that's something else that I wish the movies had been better at explaining. Because it's like, first of all, anyone who thinks that Darth Sidious and Palpatine aren't the same person is just blatant. Like, who is watching those movies and not thinking, well, it's obviously the same guy.
I know. I wish I would have been able to go into the prequels, not like just
Yeah,
being aware of that, because obviously I can't see it any other way. But I was thinking about that in Phantom Menace. I'm like, he has the same nose.
yeah.
Is no one, but I'm maybe like people who would notice that are not seeing Sidious hologram. So anyway, that's kind of literal that they wouldn't recognize him. But also, yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Well, and I think it was also like, because from the, even though his name is never said in the like Return of the Jedi, but in the ancillary material, we know his name is Palpatine. So like when a character named Palpatine shows up in Phantom Menace, it's like, well, he's obviously Darth Sidious, or what, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
Yes. Yeah. You
it's
don't.
like all of the kind of mystery was taken out just by being a fan of Star Wars. Um, there's also this weird thing. If you really track what Sidious's plan is, it makes no sense, and you kind of just have to put it out of your mind, because it the movies operate as though, like, the plots operate as though Palpatine and Sidious are two different people with two different sets of goals, and it's obviously not the case. And so if, like, I used to have it all like mapped out. It's been such a long time since I did it, but like it truly makes no sense. Like, why would Palpatine do this if he knows that he wants this to happen the same way? Like, I understand that he's essentially trying to like cause a war so that he can get powers, but like individual things, it's like, why would he want to kill this person for no reason when she can speak on his behalf? You know what I mean? Like all this weird
Yeah.
stuff. Like
But I
it.
also think he's so smart and so many steps ahead that he is like,
Sure.
if I do this now, in 10 years, it will help me convince people the Jedi are horrible and
That's, you know
deserve
what?
to be exterminated. I think
That's
he's
fair.
super smart.
That is fair. And like we see in the shorts, like he is using like there, I think Dooku has a very strong reason to separate from the Jedi and like join the Separatists. Like he is like, we're doing it completely wrong. The Republic is doomed, essentially. Um, which is a rough thing to like think about nowadays in the real world, when it's like, oh no, governments are pretty bad. Um, we won't get into that here.
Yeah, not a lot of good choices.
Yeah. But then we see the moment where Dooku makes his final choice to eschew the Jedi, and he's the one who kills Yaddle, by the way, which crazy. Like,
Wild.
yeah.
And also
Uh,
that Bryce Dallas Howard voiced Yaddle.
yeah,
Like,
that
it
was
was
very
just
weird.
like
That
this,
was
like,
very,
what
very
is
weird.
happening? But
Um,
really good.
a
And
really cool
really,
fight.
yeah.
And we see how strong she was, but it's like too much for her. Like, because he crushes her at the end with like a big door, and then
Mhm.
she like pushes it up with the Force, and you're like, oh my god, she's like
She's gonna make
amazing.
it.
And then she just keels over because Force was
That
too
was a
too
lot.
much. But that was super rad. And then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I completely understand Dooku as a character, and now I understand going into the Clone Wars
Where
everything
he's
he
coming
does and why.
from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And all this, and
Yeah.
we see him erase the Jedi archives about Kamino and stuff like that.
Camino, yeah.
So I thought, I mean, that might be my favorite arc of the four. I loved it. I just think it gave so much good backstory to the characters. It was really nice to see those moments between Qui-Gon and Dooku, because that was something like, it always felt like in the movie in Attack of the Clones when he's like, "Oh yes, I was Qui-Gon was my Padawan." I was like, "Are you lying?" Like
Like, what?
I
Yeah,
never
it
bought it,
doesn't
but
connect.
now I get it, obviously. Um yeah. I just love that. I love that kind of backstory. I think next chronologically, yes, it would be basically the parallel story to this one, from Tales of the Jedi, which is about everyone's favorite character. I don't.
Ahsoka!
No, not Ahsoka.
Oh, sorry. Tales of the
The,
Empire, not Jedi.
yeah, Ahsoka's a good
Sorry.
one.
Yes, yes, you're right.
We're
That's what I was
ping
like, wait, what?
ponging.
Gotcha. I'm
Um,
there now.
what is her name?
Morgan or
Yeah,
Barris?
Morgan
Morgan
Elsbeth.
Elsbeth. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And I'm watching those. So it's 3 episodes. You see her as a child on whatever planet she's from. Then you see her uh trying to basically sell out people to the Empire so that she can get power. And then the third episode is her fully in like where we see her in The Mandalorian, like as the ruler essentially of this like Western slash Japanese styled town.
Yes.
And the entire time I'm watching this, I'm going, you cannot make me like Morgan Elsbeth. You can't. I not that I like she's an evil character, fine. I just don't think that's an interesting character. And I don't think this does a very good job of making her interesting.
Yeah, that's where I went. I want to say performances, excellent.
Unrelated, yes.
Animation,
Sure.
entirely gorgeous. But yeah, I watched those and I love the Night Sisters. I think they're very interesting. I've loved learning more about them in Ahsoka. And we're on Dathomir. Okay, like we kind of knew that was her backstory, like that she was around when her people essentially got wiped out, and we got to see another clan. So I'm like, okay, I'm on board. And then we got to the second one, and I'm like, but what is the arc?
Mhm.
um, she started with a grudge, and she ended with a grudge. Which, look, I do kind of respect that. That I'm like, she has held on to that. I don't agree with it, but I get it, and I like the moment where I'm like, oh, like you're a business lady now, like you're trying to sell your plans and you're mad, but also I'm like, you're exploiting people and you're not doing really any favors for Corvus.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, I feel like I didn't do anything to make me feel like super relatable. Like her choices
And I
continued to
couldn't
be self-serving choices.
yeah. I couldn't tell if we were meant to like the first episode when she's a child and we see like the tragedy of, her life and everything
Yes.
like that. You go a little ways to be like, okay, she made bad choices and but she had like a hard existence
Like
and stuff like
this
that.
is where it came from. Sure.
But yeah, the next two, you're just like, oh, she's just awful. Like like I understand it's Tales of the Empire, but it's like you still need to, I guess, have
Look,
somebody you can grasp onto.
yes. Like with Dooku, I'm like,
Yeah,
ultimately, do I agree with what he did in the end? No, but I get it.
right. Uh,
Um, I
yeah,
felt like I was missing something with the Morgan arc, and I'm like, was there
yeah,
a beat that I was supposed to like be like, oh, but I'm just like, all right, you started out mad, you're still mad, and you've done a lot of mean things and murdery things.
yeah. Well, and it really felt like the second episode, the middle one where she goes to the Empire and is trying to sell her wares essentially. Um, and she talks to Captain Pelion, who then kicks it up to Admiral Thrawn. It felt just this is just a prequel to Ahsoka. Do you know? It was just like, okay, you're setting up all
Yeah,
this stuff.
because I do like the Thrawn recruitment moment, but because it's
Yeah.
Thrawn and it's Lars Mikkelsen and they both get
Hmm.
to play, all those things. But I'm like, my anger gives me strength, and I know like I was looking back the title up the episodes. It's the path of fear, the path of anger, the path of hate. So it is like her choices just have
Hmm.
put her on the dark side, and she continues to stay on the path to the dark side. But it wasn't. That was not super compelling
No,
to me.
because it all just felt like inevitable, and it never really,
Yeah,
and it like to your point earlier, it never really felt like a choice. It felt like, or I guess a struggle of a choice. Like it was just like she made this decision early on, and that's just what she's going to
she's
do.
like, I'm
She
sticking to it.
never wants like she makes it seem like she cares about Corvus, but obviously she does not. And
No,
then by the time you get to the third episode, where a new like the Empire has fallen, the New Republic, a representative comes back, somebody who lived on Corvus before, and is basically just like, hey, you got to stand down or like join up or whatever. And then she has her guards just straight up slaughter those people
yeah,
and blow up
burns
the
the
ship
forest,
and burns the forest.
which is the burnt forest we see in Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's more of like maybe it is that she kept recommitting to the same choice instead
Yeah,
of.
maybe.
But yeah, it didn't super work for me.
It did not. Yeah. I think that was easily the weakest. And that was the beginning. And I was just like, oh no.
I know. I was like, okay, well, glad they're short. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think if it would have got me more if there would have been Or at least I would have been more intrigued if there were more Night Sister things.
I was just about to say, yeah, I agree. Like
Um,
Dathomir is so much like I mean, obviously Clone Wars explored it loads, but I think there's always more to that, and different tribes and things like that. And I liked the character of like the elder mother on Dathomir, who like
oh,
basically
yeah.
says to Morgan at the end of that episode, it's like, all right, I tried to help you, but now you're on your own, essentially. Like,
Yeah, you can't.
yeah.
Yeah, I would have loved to learn more. I mean, I guess it was no longer relevant for Morgan's story, but I would have expected, I think, to see more of her Night Sistery things beyond her anger about
Hmm.
losing her people, only because the Night Sister part of her is so important in Ahsoka
Yeah.
when she hears the Great Mothers. So yeah, I was very whelmed.
Like you, you almost forget that she even has like superpowers because it's like she never uses them for
Yeah,
any reason. So it's yeah, didn't like that one too much. But then ping ponging back to Tales of the Jedi, we do have the Ahsoka arc, which I thought was really cool. And so the first episode of Tales of the Jedi is about Ahsoka's birth, and her mom and things, and I thought that was really
ugh,
fascinating.
baby Ahsoka.
Yeah. um, and then we get the entire Dooku arc, and then we get 2 more Ahsoka episodes, and I thought that really worked. Because it's 3 completely, it's not one continuous story the way it is with Dooku. It's not, I guess it's sort of like the Morgan Elsbeth arc, but where it's like 3 different parts in her life, but they're like contextual moments. Like, so we get her birth and we see her first kind of flash of using the Force. Similar to what we've seen with Grogu, like an animal is about to kill somebody, and then like she can stop it,
Connect with it.
connect
Yeah,
with the animal, not murder it the way they do on Mandalorian, thankfully.
thankfully.
Um, I also love the little dogs.
Oh my gosh, the little space dogs.
Yeah,
They're really cute. I
I think there
love
was like
them.
just an actual dog on whatever planet that was that Dooku and Qui-Gon go to. I think that was just a dog. It
That
was
makes me
weird.
happy.
Yeah.
Just like dogs in Star Wars. Do you know what random everyday things in Star Wars that I just noticed for the first time watching Phantom Menace on the big screen for the first time since it came out?
Mm-hmm.
One of Anakin's little friends has braces, and I'm like, I love that there are braces in Star Wars.
That's so fun. I
It's
didn't
just like,
notice that.
what? Anyway,
Yeah.
full of
Uh,
surprises, Star Wars, no matter how many times you've seen them.
everyone on this channel and also Amy on this call knows that I'm a big action figure fan, and there is an exclusive 3-pack of Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul from the Phantom Menace fight, and I want to get it. It's really cool looking.
That does sound really cool.
I will send you the link so you can look at it. It's really neat. Anyway, but yeah, I thought so. Then that was the first episode, which gave us some great backstory. The second episode is uh, Ahsoka in her early Padawan days, so like early Clone Wars stuff. Um, Passing a trial where there are probe, or what are those called? Like basically training droids that are designed to act like battle droids, and she easily passes that test. And Anakin's like, "This is nothing. Don't this. What's the point of this? Anybody can fight battle droids." So then he has her surrounded by clones, Captain Rex and his team, who have to stun her, and she has to try to block the blasts, and she just keeps getting stunned and is out for an hour or
Over
more.
and over. Yeah.
And then, and you think, oh man, Anakin is such a hard ass on her, but then she eventually goes, no, let's keep going. I could do better in all this stuff. Even at one point, Rex goes, hey, that was great, good for you. And then she's like, no, I can do better than that. And so they do. And it's like, okay, now we're seeing where she actually gets her drive. Like, because she's very, early Clone Wars is tough to watch, especially that movie, the Clone Wars movie, because she's
Oh,
kind of a brat and I
oh, yeah.
don't like her early on.
Yeah, she's super annoying.
Yeah.
Honestly, at first, yes.
Yeah. And then we get a little snip at the end,
Snip.
I did that on purpose. Uh, from the end of the last season of Clone Wars, where Rex and she are walking out as though he's pretending to turn her over to the clones after Order 66, and he says, let's hope that your training worked out. And then we obviously know from watching the Clone Wars that there's that whole scene where the two of them just have to kill a bunch of clones or stun them, I guess.
Yeah.
They're not trying to kill them, but
Some of them die.
yeah. I thought that was really cool and a great way to like bring that into the overall storyline.
I remember when I interviewed Dave about Filoni about those about Tales of the Jedi when it came out, and him talking about wanting to do that specifically so that you could see how she could survive Order 66.
mm,
How but even without that piece, I think it makes so much sense that Anakin would train her that way because they were in a war and he
right.
would want to push her, he'd want her to be the best, and he wouldn't want anything to happen to her because he's attached.
Yeah. So it
So I
seems like he's being really like overly hard on her, but there's a reason she didn't get wiped out. Like she knows what she's doing. She was trained by the best. And that's,
yeah.
um which obviously so much of all of the animated universe is the Ahsoka and Anakin relationship. And that has gone into Ahsoka, the live action show, to less. I think it's less effective there, which we talked about in your last appearance. I believe we talked about Ahsoka. But I seeing that, and also it's just kind of fun to see anything with the Clone Wars characters and the cast and everything like that. I'm just like doing little
You're
like
back.
yeah,
Yeah. Always. I
you
love
know,
hearing Matt Lanter as Anakin.
yeah, and because he is in my head. I mean, it was really weird watching Hayden Christensen back in Ahsoka because it's like, okay, that's not what my head thinks Anakin sounds like anymore.
Yeah, same. I'm so used to Matt. And that was like I mean, that's the Anakin everyone's heard the most of, but that was, I'm
Right.
like, that's my Anakin.
Um, and then the third episode is basically after Order 66, and she is going into hiding, and Bail Organa's there, and is
Oh,
based
the funeral of Padme.
yeah,
Oh, I hate
yeah.
it.
He's
I
like, "What are
love
you
it.
doing here?" And she's like, "Well, she was my friend," like, which is adorable. Um,
I know.
and then he's basically like, you know, "We need you if you want to if you want to be involved, we need you." And then that's how she eventually comes back and is becomes Fulcrum essentially. And I was like, this is another great like little piece of, information about her. She joins the rebellion. I love it.
Yeah. And that short was a little controversial because it conflicts to some degree with the canonical, probably still novel called Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston that covers the same time period. Um, and even to the point where it shows Ahsoka signing up with Bail, kind of a little the same from a farm town sort of situation. But yeah, that was not well looked upon, including because in the book, one of the characters, Ahsoka, befriended on this planet that she ends up helping defend, and then she ends up making the decision like, I can no longer just stand by and hide. I have to go
Hmm.
help. Um, was queer. So then the series did the same thing, separate setting. It kind of hit some of the same beats, but it definitely put the status of that book's canon for those who think about such things in question.
Mm.
But I liked the funeral moment. Like, really, I don't remember if that was in the Ahsoka novel. I thought that was really beautiful because, of course, Ahsoka would like risk everything to go to her friend's funeral.
Yeah. And yeah, that whole sequence on the farm, I wasn't aware that there was any discrepancy. Which seems weird because it's like this is all now canon stuff. So like, why are you contradicting your own canon?
Yes.
Um, but yeah, so like she, uh, a truck full of hay is about to fall on somebody, and she uses her powers to stop it, and then that person knows, hey, you're a Jedi. I'm not going to tell anybody. But then her terrible brother like decides he's gonna just call the Empire and be like,
Like,
"Hey, there's a Jedi here," not thinking that anything bad would happen to him, and in fact, he'd get rewarded. And the unnamed uh brother, unnumbered, I guess, brother, played by Clancy Brown, who looks really cool. He's got a really
he
cool like
does, cool
skull mask.
design. Yeah.
Um, has just burned everything to the ground, and like Ahsoka comes back, and she absolutely annihilates him. Like
She really does. I'm like, "Oh, you didn't have a chance, buddy."
she doesn't have her lightsaber; she's just using skills, and then just immediately grabs his lightsaber and kills him with it. It's like so cool because you just kind of see that like the the Inquisitors aren't they're not as skilled. They're just, they have I think
They're
that was a a point in the first season of Rebels or maybe second season of Rebels where like the Inquisitors have a double-bladed spinning lightsaber. It's like this is not in keeping with the form. Like you don't know how to use it properly.
no, they're kinda thugs.
Yeah. And a lot of them used to be Jedi, which we'll get into very shortly, but um or at least, were strong with the Force or something like that. And I think that's something else that's in the Fallen Order and Survivor, the games, is that there are several, like the Ninth Sister and I forget her number, but um, like basically the main antagonist of the first game, you learn was the Padawan of Seer Junda, which is the other like Jedi in
Oh,
the game. Um, and she, uh, yeah, it's really interesting. It's a really cool um dynamic where Cal's just like, "What are you doing to all of these people? Like, we should be fighting the Empire. Why are you joining up?" Like, and it's really, I think the Inquisitors is a really great addition to the canon of that era. But and speaking of Inquisitors, we have our final arc, which is the second arc in Tales of the Empire, the better one by far,
yeah.
but still
Yes.
still didn't quite do it for me. But that is the one, the aforementioned Barriss, um, being released from jail on the condition that she join the Inquisitors, and then quickly learning she doesn't want to be an Inquisitor. And then it felt very anticlimactic to me. I was like, okay, is she going to be bad? Because that would be interesting. But then no, she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. So then she just goes into hiding again.
Yeah. Yes. And that's like a long-held fan theory that Barriss, ever since the ideas of Inquisitors were introduced, I feel like, in Star Wars Rebels, that people were starting to be like, "Oh, what if Barriss was an Inquisitor?" And even in, Ahsoka, when Marok, before we knew that Marok was kind of
Robot.
the Night Sister Golem robot
Oh
thing, or
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah,
I think people were theorizing that it was Barriss, and that would have been like Barriss, Ahsoka, like, I get it. So that's what got me so excited in the trailer to see that, because I thought that was really interesting. And then once you get into it, I agree with you that I'm like, okay, it's Barriss. She's going to realize, like, the Empire is fantastic about manipulation and putting the spin of, we're just trying to make things more safe for everyone. The Jedi really, like, messed up the galaxy. They've committed crimes. Like, we're going to fix it. It's okay. And for someone like Barriss, who's like, well, probably really wants out of prison, but
yeah,
also before she went there, was already disillusioned with the Jedi. Like, it's not a stretch for her to hear what they're selling or to buy what they're selling. Anyway, where I'm going with this is I feel like her choices were inevitable. Like, I'm like, Barriss is going to see what's really up. She's not going to be on board with this.
yeah.
Um, I wouldn't have predicted, like, I didn't know if she was going to go into hiding or what, but I was like, I was interested in the choices she made, but they were not surprising.
Yeah, I kind of just feel like if because that's in the Clone Wars, she's the mirror image of Ahsoka in that like she has gone over the deep end, she's doing bad stuff, and then Ahsoka, because of that, sees like, oh, the Jedi are bad, but I'm not gonna go so far as to like sabotage them or anything. I'm just out. Um, and so I was kind of expecting more from her. Kind of, it seems like her first journey, or like one of the early times she goes out with her um elder sister or whatever, uh to again going to a small farming community. That's a very common thing in these shorts.
Yes.
Looking for a Jedi. um the governor has lied to the main sister. Barris talks to a little kid who tells the truth, and then the sister just straight up kills everybody.
Starts murdering. Yeah.
And Barris
It
goes,
is
"This is wrong.
like,
Goodbye."
yes. And I mean, I'm also like, good, like, thankfully, but also I think it could have been more interesting if she's like,
Yeah.
or not interesting, unexpected, maybe is the better word. Because I'm like, yeah, of course you're going to be I mean, I would have also, though, if Barris would have leaned into it, I would have had a really hard time believing it because, before her turn against the Jedi, Barris was like, I am a rule follower. Her
Mhm.
master, Luminara Unduli, was nothing like Anakin. There was not an ounce of recklessness involved, to the point sometimes when Barris was with Ahsoka, you could tell she was like, "Are you allowed to do that? That seems like a bad." Like she's
Yeah.
um. So if she would have leaned into it, I wouldn't have. Here I am being like, I would have liked something unexpected, but I would not have believed it to be true in
Yeah.
her.
And then I think that's ultimately what my issue was with the entirety of Tales of the Empire, because like while I did like the Barris stuff better just because I think Barris is a more interesting character and everything like
Yes.
that, it's both of them still felt like foregone conclusions. It's like we know where Morgan Elsbeth goes. We know she's fully bad. There's not enough of an arc of her like turn to badness, like you said. She just is angry from the beginning and just keeps going further into it. Um, and then like it's like, oh, is Barris going to be an Inquisitor? Oh, she is going to be an Inquisitor. But not for very long.
It
And now
didn't last long.
she's just like she's basically just Ahsoka, but somewhere else. Like,
Not like, yeah, like helping people more directly rather than fighting the Empire. Like,
yeah.
I mean, fighting the Empire is helping people too, but you know what I mean. She's like very one-on-one.
Hmm. But
Um,
I don't know if it quite like undoes, because I don't think it actually like hurts the Clone Wars arc, which is very important to
no.
Ahsoka's story or anything like that. But it felt like Dave Filoni was just like, I love Barris too much to do anything too bad to her. So now because even though like the sister like stabs her at the end when she's trying to keep her away from the escaping Jedi, and she's like, all right, I'm going to save you just so you can get me out of here, kind of thing. And then it just ends. It's like, so I'm
Yeah, so you're
assuming
like,
we're going to
what
get some
is
more, but
she? Yeah, it's not a clear ending
right.
again. It does feel sometimes like there's like, I just want to save this for later just in case.
Yeah.
But to
Um,
your point, it is like such a strong like contrast of like, we know where Dooku's story ends and we know where
mhm.
Ahsoka's story ends. But I found those stories, just their arcs, more gripping and
Yeah.
surprising.
Yeah. It was night and day. And I know that like Tales of the Jedi came out first, but like I watched that second, and I was very underwhelmed by Tales of the Empire. And then I was like, all right, well, I'm going to watch Tales of the Jedi because I said I was gonna. And then I was just gripped the entire time. I mean,
Good. I'm
it's,
glad it got you to watch Tales of the Jedi. So
yeah,
that's a real win. It's
yeah,
so good.
it's really good. I'll probably watch that again at some point. I think it's very short, um, but it did make me want to rewatch the Clone Wars again.
Always. So many things do.
There
Rewatch, go
ne-
to Phantom Mist in theaters. I'm like, oh, what if I could just watch the Clone Wars?
yeah. God, there's so much good in Clone Wars. And like we were talking about with Ahsoka, like I wish that show had felt as exciting to me or as like cinematic as the cartoon does. And I know that they're sort of hampered by the fact that it's live action, but it's like it felt so staid. It felt so kind of like without like there were exciting moments, but like in general it lacked a lot of thrust that I think might, if they had been 22-minute episodes for a cartoon, it would have felt a lot more um there would have been more urgency, because the story is exciting, and like I should have been so happy when Ezra showed up, and I just kind of wasn't, because by that point I was just like, this is not very good.
Aw.
So thinking back on that, but now I'm just like, Makes me, like I said, I want to watch The Bad Batch or finish The Bad Batch. Because I do
Same.
think that still animation is where the best Star Wars stuff is happening. Um,
Agree, except for Andor.
except for Andor.
But yes, by
Yeah.
and large, like I feel like I'm more trusting of animation, right? I'm more willing to go in with an open mind instead of
Yeah.
with live action where I go in with an open mind, but I'm also like nobody's going to be able to see my face, but it's a little of the what are you?
Yeah.
This could look really cool and be insubstantial. It could do neither, like like with the Acolyte, we'll see.
Yeah. I'm interested to see the Acolyte because I don't know very much about the High Republic. I think it's cool that they had this whole initiative to set up a world entirely in spin-off material and then bring it into,
Yeah.
or movement. What is it?
On screen,
On
live
screen.
action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like a little of that shows up in Jedi Survivor, but also it's kind of it's the past coming forward. It doesn't take place in that time period and
Right.
everything like that. I think the cast, the most recent trailer that came out on May the 4th, or at least May the 4th weekend, of the Acolyte, I thought was very compelling. It made me really interested in what the kind of mystery at the heart of the story was going to be. Also, it's got a cool cast. Like I'm into all those people.
Yeah, the
So
cast looks really good.
So yeah, that'll come out in June. We'll probably have you back on if you're willing to do that and talk about that.
Yes.
As you are indeed our Star Wars field reporter. But yeah, do you have any final thoughts on either tales? Either tales?
Either of the tales. No, I want to reemphasize like the animation. We talk about it like story wise, right? But also the longer they keep doing animation, like the more gorgeous it
Yeah.
gets. Like to just like a. Sometimes I don't know if I did it. Well, I haven't watched Tales of the Empire on my TV yet because I
Mm,
watch screeners.
yeah.
Watermarked screeners on my laptop are never going to look as
No, no,
nice.
no, no. Very true.
But I remember with Tales of the Jedi at certain points just pausing it because I'm like, how do they
Mm-hmm.
keep like the lighting, the textures, the atmosphere? It's always so impressive, and the music was lovely. So I had to make sure I
The
really
music
enjoyed
was really good, man.
strong, like kinder music, like
Yeah, really having a good time. Like that was
yeah,
easily the best, or not the best part, but my favorite part of some of those Morgan Elsbeth episodes was the music for sure.
music, yeah,
Um, and that really just makes Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like, John Williams started it, but like any music needs to be to set the tone for Star Wars, and there's some there's room there to like really bring the world to life, and that's been my favorite stuff. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I forgot about the music. It's hard to talk about music. I don't have like the words to
I
describe
know.
music, but
I know anytime I interview a composer and they're like, blah, 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 and not blah, blah, blah. It's very like instruments, like just the words they use. I'm like,
yeah,
I have to make a note in my notes to be like, I got to Google that until I find,
yeah.
and then sometimes I have to email them and be like, I know that was an important music thing, but I don't know what it is.
I love music so much, but I do not have the vocabulary to like convey what it means the way that I do with film, or even like prose. Like, you can describe using words to describe words, but
Yeah.
it's very hard for me to describe music and how it elicits, because it is maybe the most emotional. Like,
Yeah. I would
it's the
agree with
most
that.
eliciting of emotion. Anyway, we could talk about music theory another time. Amy, plug yourself, your other work, or your social media if you choose to do so.
Yes, you can find me mostly Instagram only these days, really, at Amy_geek. I have a newsletter under Amy Ratcliffe on Substack. And that's really all. I have a book coming out next year, but it's really too early to talk about it, but I'm excited about it, so there's that.
Great. We'll
Yeah.
plug that. Go read Amy's other books. She's written quite a few. If you like Star Wars and you like Amy's thoughts on Star Wars, she's written quite a few books. So please go look for those. You can find me on Instagram at Kyle. Nope, abort. I do that every single time. You can find me on Instagram at functional_nerd. You can find me on Letterboxd at Kyle_Anderson. And if you like Doctor Who, I'll plug my other podcast. I do a podcast called Doctor Who: The Writer's Room. I've done it for about a decade. It's a monthly podcast where we talk about Doctor Who scripts. and whether or not they are, how effective they are as fiction. Which you can find anywhere you get podcasts. All right. Thank you again, Amy, for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I've been Kyle Anderson. Join me again next week on Laser Focus when my guest will be a different person. Bye-bye. Laser Focus is a production of Nerdist Industries and Legendary Digital Networks. It was produced, edited, and hosted by me, Kyle Anderson. For more, visit Nerdist.com.